Hi there, Peter Temes here, founder and president of the Institute for Innovation in Large Organizations, or ILO. I want to talk today about one of the common questions we're asked by members of our institute, which are mostly very large companies, government agencies, some big not-for-profits like big healthcare systems. Regularly, they come to us and they say, we need to work on our culture. We need to create more of a culture of innovation. How do we create that in this large organization? And there are really two very specific answers. One derives from the fact that in almost every case, when you feel like in your organization, the culture is not quite right, the culture is too slow, the culture is not very innovative, it's because you're too insular. You spend too much time, especially in the middle of your organization, looking inward to the organization rather than outward to the customer, right? These are places where the average mid-level executive isn't saying every day, how can I help the customer? I mean, and even if you're running a large accounting group, or even if you're doing pure R&D, you need to be walking in thinking with even a little bit of anxiety, what does the customer want? How can I best serve the customer? How can we get the value that this great organization can create and is creating into the hands and minds of the folks we serve? Instead, they're coming in and saying, how can I make my boss happy? How can I help the chairman's 10-point plan become more realized? And how can I get a higher score on measures of those things? If you look at the companies that have the clearest, most vivid cultures of innovation, and I would put Toyota and Amazon right at the top of the list, they are customer obsessed. They have the presence of their customers through data and also through actual physical customers all over the place because they don't want to push them away. They want to bring them in even when they do planning. That makes such a difference. If there's a little bit of anxiety, the kind of anxiety that makes everybody hustle a little more and that creates that culture of innovation, it's all about what did we learn about the customer today? What do these folks want? How can we help them want more, bigger, better things that we know we can deliver to them? You see that happening through incentives, and incentives are critical, right? So if you look at a company like Amazon, when you're measuring how well an Amazon worker is working, you're looking a lot at what signals did we get from the customer about the product assortment, about the prices, about what's available here, but not over there, about how quickly we were able to deliver. There are not hundreds, not thousands, there are millions of signals a day that come into Amazon's various systems about customer experience. Customer feedback is vivid. Being relentlessly close to the customer is number one on Amazon's list of leadership principles. And boy, it shows. And that's one reason that they're offering so much more. They're becoming more efficient almost every day. There's a lot to admire about that. There are other things to learn from Amazon about maybe what we don't want to do, though that's likely going to be a different video. For now, think about that notion of changing culture, not by focusing more, not by getting the culture consultants and taking your leadership and putting them in a room and locking the customers out and just staring at each other for fancy, expensive on-site retreats to talk about culture. Think about getting those executives to where the customer meets the product. Think about getting the signals every day, every moment of the customer's experience and desires and hopes and dreams vividly in front of those folks. And when you have the quarterlies, the quarterly reviews, when you have the annual performance reviews, when you're deciding who goes up the ladder to this job or that job, the score that these folks should get based on what customers experience, based on how well they've responded to what customers are asking for, and based on how vividly they've engaged all these folks and helped the customer want more and better and deeper, more satisfying, more valuable things that the organization can give them. That's how we make that real. Now, other companies do it in different ways. Toyota does it a little bit more abstractly because they're not creating an experience that the customer interacts with 100 clicks 1 or 2 times a day. That's certainly my experience with Amazon's e-commerce platform. I've bought Toyotas every few years, so you get a lot less signaling. You get a lot less signaling through Toyota, but those signals do more. One of the things that Toyota is really interesting about is how they allocate their operating capital every day a little bit differently. If they're selling 10,000 Toyotas in a day, those 10,000 transactions are creating signals that a week later will change how many of which model is created. We'll change the color assortment available. We'll change some of the pricing incentives through their dealer network and through their direct sales. That's hugely important. The way that they're not saying, let's get in a room and think and plan, which frankly is what the big three do quite a lot. We've worked with all of them. Every one of the big three American auto manufacturers has been a member of our institute. And you can look at Ford and you can say, man, when pickup trucks are great, Ford is great. When they're not so great, Ford has more trouble. You can go and look at GM and you can say, boy, the minivan gave them a decade of great earnings. And when the minivan is down, GM is down. Now that's shifting. They have different market mix. They're all looking toward electric. But what you can see there is these guys are all planning centric, and they're not nearly as customer centric as the organizations that we think of as being the real leaders, the most innovative cultures and the most innovative companies. They move faster, they have better value for price, and they're the companies that most of us want to engage with more as customers, right? Because not only are we getting what we know we want, we're also in some ways wondering what other things we might find in our relationship with these companies that can help us aspire to new and better and different things. That's great. And there's more and more of that happening in this moment of the economy. Whirlpool did this beginning almost 20 years ago. We did a fair amount of work with them around this stuff by creating an innovation index, a very formal way. And here we are talking about incentives for workers, right? A very formal way that anyone in the middle of the organization or above would have in their quarterly reviews and their annual reviews, a score, which captures how many innovative projects they were working on and how great their contribution was. It captures how much new stuff, right? Products that were less than 24 months in development or in the market, every individual has spent time working on assisting directly or indirecting. That creates a great incentive. So you go inside Whirlpool when they start this program, and ordinary folks who aren't, the crazy brave ones, but they're really good at their jobs, and they're looking around every day saying, gosh, I hope I can find some crazy new experiment I can be part of because I want those innovation index points. Nothing wrong with that. Ordinary folks come to work to do what they're being asked to do. And when the company asks you to be more engaged in innovative new projects, because that's the kind of company they really want to be, you get more of that behavior. That kind of incentivization is vital. And if you're working in an organization where you don't have a team of 20,000, you're not the boss who can make that the policy, but you've got a team of 20 or of 2, you can do the same thing. And you do the same thing by talking to people less formally and saying, look, as your boss, I need to be your biggest advocate. I want you to succeed even better than you're succeeding now. I want you to rise up even faster. And one of the ways you're going to always have my full support is if at least once a quarter, you've worked in at least some way on a project that failed, but from which we learned something. So you keep letting me know. And when we sit down for our quarterly reviews, we'll have the forms and we'll do that in a serious way. And I'm also going to ask you, tell me about what you worked on this quarter that didn't really succeed from beginning to end, but that was your contribution to something new. That's how I'm going to be just the greatest advocate for you when I know you're on board for that too. So you create these incentives. Quick side note, we tend to think about the directional nature of management, right? Thinking about what it means to be a manager of a group of 2 or 20. We tend to spend a lot of time managing up. We tend to spend some time managing sideways, and we spend some time managing down, right? Which is to say, you're a senior manager, you're a director, you're spending a lot of time engaging with the VPs, with the more senior managers and directors, because they make decisions that will determine your bonus and what your next move is. The more time we spend managing up, the less we contribute to our customers. The more time we spend focusing on creating value downstream in the organization for almost everybody in the organization, the more value at a better price we get to the customers. Now, when I first kind of thought through this, of course, my reaction was, that's right, looking up the org chart. You sons of guns, I don't want to spend as much time going to those meetings and working with you, right? If managing up takes time away from delivering to the customer, and therefore we want to do the least of it we can, we tend to think of ourselves as folks who are the managers up. But think about the 2 or 20 people who work for you, and maybe it's 200, maybe it's 2,000. How much time are you asking them to manage up to you? That's where this is really valuable. And how can you, using all the principles of efficiency and agile management, how can you shorten those meetings? How can you get them thinking less about how to make you happy and more about how to make your customer happy. These are major contribution elements to helping your organization become a culture of innovation. And that's the game that we're playing. That's what we want to do. Thank you. Be well.